Hello YouTube, my name is Rob Guillory and this is my YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in. If you don't know me, I am a comic book artist slash writer slash creator. I've been in this industry for about 15 to 20 years-ish, give or take. And yeah, this is going to be a fun little experiment. So I've knocked around the publishers for a while. I've worked at pretty much every major publisher in comics over my career. But I've also been a really private person. If you know anything about me, I much prefer being behind this desk than really anywhere else. I definitely don't like being in front of a camera. So this is going to be a huge transition for me. So bear with me as I kind of get my bearings and figure this YouTube thing out. The goal for this channel is going to be to give you guys a front row seat at my work, at how I work. My point of pride in this industry is being a very consistent creator. I'm a page a day guy. Every day I'm drawing a page of something. And I want to start to kind of talk about what I've learned in this industry in the amount of time I've been here. It's weird to me to even think about the fact that I've been in this industry for 15, almost 20 years. It's very strange and it freaks me out a little bit. But I've learned some things in that time, and I've kind of entered this point in my life. I hit 40 last year, so I've been thinking about legacy, and I've been thinking about giving back and sharing what I've learned, and that's what this channel is about. I know that there's a lot of fairly negative discourse in comics on YouTube, and I don't want to participate in that. I want to start to pour in something really positive into the stream, and that's what this channel is going to be about. And also, it's going to be just I want it to be a discourse with you guys. I want to talk to you guys. I want to hear what you are struggling with in your own creative walk. Part of my motivation for this channel also is to give. I think about myself when I was a young creator, and I was coming up in trying to break into the comic industry back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the internet was really just kind of becoming a thing. And there wasn't a lot of material, a lot of information, and a lot of insight into what working in a creative medium actually meant, especially comics. Obviously, that's changed. But the one thing I haven't really seen a lot of creators talk about is the day-to-day of what it looks like to actually work in comics, but also have a family, have a wife, have other interests. Like, what does that look like? So that's going to be part of this. So again, bear with me. I'm going to figure it out as we go. But I really just wanted to get this first episode out just to get things rolling, because I know this is going to be a muscle that's going to need to be flexed regularly to really get good at it. So that's what this first episode is about. Today, I am working on commissions. I have lots of commissions. I've worked through most of them, but I have a little batch I need to finish. So you guys can hang out with me today while I work on that. All right. So that's it for now. Let's get to work. All right. So here's a look at our commission for today. This is a Bray Wyatt commission. Bray Wyatt is a professional wrestler who actually tragically died recently, which was pretty sad. I was actually a pretty big fan of his. For anyone that doesn't know, I'm actually a pretty big pro wrestling fan. My grandfather was a huge wrestling fan, and he kind of passed that down to me as well. So this commission is one of those that's a treat. Sometimes you get commissions and you don't really have any idea who the characters are, but this one I'm very familiar with, so it's a lot of fun. So just a little glimpse at how again, going back to my process, the way commissions usually work for me, I'll put out a call for a list. Usually it's when there's an opening in my schedule, when I know I can kind of fit them in between my day-to-day work. So I get them in, and usually the very first thing I do is I lay out thumbnails. So here's a look at my thumbnails. Thumbnails are just really small, very tiny sketches, just working at the layout problems and things like that. I don't think I did a sketch for this particular commission, but yeah, so here's these are basically everything I had from this current batch that I'm working through now. All of these are done. which is awesome. But yeah, these are just me trying to solve the problem of the composition. From this, I go directly to the pencils, which is where we are now. These are actually pretty tight pencils. I usually do a kind of a looser version of these, just, you know, just laying things out. So this one is ready to ink. So that's what I'll be doing today. So the tools I really like to use, again, I'm a really simple dude, so I like working with really simple materials. And you know, it's funny, I think a lot of creators, when we all start out, we're all looking for the perfect pen. And to this day, every creator I know is looking for that perfect pen, and they just never find it. But my personal favorite are these. These are called Zebra Food brush pens, Fude. You can buy them on Amazon, pretty much, I mean, anywhere, Dick Blick, anywhere pens are sold. Usually they're like $2 a pen, but they're really great. They have a lot of versatility. You can do fine line with them. These are actually the super fine, but they actually still, you know, they have a feel of, they feel like a firm brush pen. Like, I like brush pens, but sometimes they get a little too floppy for me. I like the feeling of a pen, that kind of rigidity to it. So this is like a perfect in between for me. So this is a super fine, but I also have these. These are the they're the step up from the super fines. So you'll see this one actually has a bit more of a elongated tip, has a lot more flex to it. And there is a bigger version. So this is the biggest one. It's a little fatter. So these are super fun. They're cheap, they're light, they're versatile. So that's what I like. Other than that, I just use a lot of the Faber-Castell products. So these are just the micron tips, just for detail work. And I'll use just standard brushes. I have tons of throwaway brushes that I use just for laying in blacks and things like that. So as I start to figure out what the format of these videos will be, I think I'll be dedicating at least a portion of each episode to answering reader questions and giving general insight into the industry. And this being the very first one, I figure it probably makes the most sense for this episode to function as sort of an origin story. The vast majority of folks who see this will probably have no idea who I am, right? I mean, that's what I'm guessing. So let's take some time and just dig in a bit. I grew up in a small Louisiana town in South Louisiana in the 80s, a couple hours from New Orleans. A small town, really simple, not a lot going on. But what I did have was two uncles who were gigantic geeks. They'd been collecting comics since the 60s. They had a huge collection full of key issues that would probably be worth a ton nowadays. In fact, if you actually go back further in my timeline, their uncle before them was also a huge comic book fan. And it filtered down to my uncles, which then filtered down to me. Anyway, they had a huge suitcase full of classic comic books. And we're talking Chris Claremont, X-Men, George Perez, Teen Titans, all sorts of just crazy monumental runs. And they were crazy enough to just let a 2 or 3 year old me dig through all their books, which I don't understand. I have kids. I have 3 kids. And I'm only now starting to let them go through my comics now. And my youngest is 7. So they're only now starting to get into my comics. But my uncles were totally cool with it. So before I could even read, I fell in love with comics. And eventually I wanted to start my own collection. But there was a problem. And that problem was money. Comics cost money. And I have this really vivid memory of my mom telling me she was not going to buy me everything I wanted. And if I wanted to get money, get the money to buy the stuff, I need to get a job. So I was, I think, 7 or 8 at the time. So what did I do? I got a job, sort of. I got a job. My grandparents ran this janitorial service. So they'd clean houses, doctor's offices, whatever. And my grandmother, who is... my grandmother is ever the opportunist, let's put it that way. So she said to me, if you want to come work with me, if you want to pick weeds, and clean toilets and wash windows. I will pay you a certain amount every month. And up front, it was not a lot of money. I mean, this is in the 80s, but still, I think back and think, wow, she really was really skimpy with the pay. So, but that's how I spent every single Saturday morning from ages 7 until 16. So while other kids were watching Saturday morning cartoons, I was grinding. Okay, it's crazy in hindsight. It's kind of amazing. I'm actually kind of proud of it. I have distinct memories of just working on Saturday and going to work when it was dark. And we would go to these offices at like 5 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. So I completely missed all the cartoons. But I think I'm super proud of that. And I think it very much made me who I am today. So if you want to know anything about me, really the first thing to know is that I really value hard work and I value humility. These are the things that I've come back to quite often. I will no doubt be coming back to this quite often in this channel, because these are two of the virtues I live by, and they have led to any success I've ever had in this industry. But yeah, more on that in future videos. Anyway, so that's how I started buying comics. It was all from money I earned from my grandparents. So every Friday or Saturday, I'd take the money I had earned and I'd head to the local comic shop. And along the way, at some point, I think in the 4th grade, started drawing comics on my own as well. I'd always been a really sharp kid and a very visual kid. So in the 4th grade, I started drawing my own superhero comics, and very, very rudimentary stuff. I mean, this stuff, I remember my first comic was drawn on pink construction paper with ballpoint pen. Just really, really basic tools. But I had this itch in me to make comics. I just love this medium, even at a young age. So I kept making them, and I rarely ever showed them to people, to be honest with you. And I did this all the way through grade school, well into high school. And the thing is, the entire time that I was making comics as a kid, it never once registered to me that comics were an actual job. Seriously. So put yourself in my shoes. I was a kid in the rural South, raised around people who worked hard with their hands, including my parents, all of my family, myself included. I'd never known a professional artist at that point. I'd never known an adult who was making a living making any type of art, let alone comics. It wasn't until college, honestly, that it was when the internet started becoming more prevalent. That's when I realized, hey, this is actually a thing that people do, and maybe I can do it too. So I started researching. I started researching how to break into comics, and honestly, that is when the world just opened up to me. And this was, even with the limited amount of information that was on the internet at the time, but even that little bit of info was super helpful. And this eventually led to me going to my very first Comic-Con in 2001, 2002. I don't exactly remember the date. I remember it was at the end, I think, of my 2nd semester of college. So by that point, I was a cartoonist at my university's newspaper, and I had actually been quite active building a comic book portfolio. So this ended up, I ended up going to a comic show in Houston, my very first Comic-Con. And that was the very first time that I was in the presence of real comic book professionals. And this show was super small. I mean, this was literally just a few hotel conference rooms. But when I think back, the guest list was crazy. We're talking Frank Cho, Mark Waid, Mike Wieringo. They had just started their legendary run on Fantastic Four. Scott Kurtz, Andy Kuhn, Scott Morse, and Jim Mahfood was there also. And he was actually the guy that I'd really gone to the show to see because I was a giant fan of his. And that is where I got my very first portfolio review. And it was overwhelmingly positive. And it just meant so much to me. Just to have a real deal professional telling me, hey, you can do this. In fact, you're already doing it. That just opened up everything to me. And honestly, it was basically the spark that propelled me through the next few years as I began to pursue this career. So from there, I went to tons of Comic-Cons. I actually worked out kind of this cool plan that, again, I'm actually kind of blown away that I came up with at such a young age. But I came up with this plan that I was going to hit a Comic-Con every 6 months. So every 6 months, I'd have a brand new portfolio. I'd get around brand new people, brand new professionals. I would show them my work, get helpful critique, and just network and build and grow. And, you know, it just spiraled from there. So I started tabling at conventions. I started landing a little bit of paid work for not very much money, but I was paying my dues and I was building this larger body of work. And I did that for about 7 years, which, you know, the times I've told young creators it took that long from when I started pursuing it to actually really doing it, it took 7 years. Whenever I tell people that, sometimes it discourages them. But I think that's normal. I think most of the professionals I know pursued this for many years before anything really clicked. So that's how it was for me. It was a good 7 years. And eventually I ended up working on an image comic book called Chew, which was written by a guy named John Layman. And originally I was contracted for 5 issues, but we ended up doing about 64 or so. The book just blew up, way bigger than we ever expected, and it just basically laid the foundation of what's been a much bigger career than I honestly could have ever expected. I always knew I could do this job, but I've been immensely blessed beyond anything I could have expected. It's just been a really cool ride. So where I am now, I'm expanding from simply being an artist to also being a writer as well. So I've written a book called, most recently, I've written a book called Farmhand for Image Comics. That's an ongoing series. I'll be wrapping that next year. It's going to end up being about 26 issues. 20 of those issues are out right now. Another book I've written recently is a book called Mosley, which is published by Boom Studios. That's a finished series. So yeah, I think that pretty much catches you up to speed. That gives you some of the background of who I am and how I got here. Hopefully that was informative. There's lots of details to dig into in future episodes, but I will save that for future episodes. That is a good start for now. All right, guys, that concludes our very, very first video. Thank you again for tuning into this. I hope you found it enjoyable. This video went a good bit longer than I was expecting, but you know, I really kind of dig these long form videos, so I may stick with them. We'll see. Let me know in the comment section what you guys are thinking for future videos. I really do want to hear from you, and I will see you next week. I'm thinking I'll do at least one of these a week. Links for my website, for my web store, all down there. And I'll see you next week. Bye.